We're very happy to have all three speakers tonight, and David Canepa will go first. He's our San Mateo County Supervisor and President of the board, and he's been doing an excellent job, and he was formerly from the Daly City Council, so we're really happy to have you. And then, of course, we're going to hear from Ulysses Vinson and Eddie Ahn in consecutive order.
Yes. Okay. So we can get first started with Supervisor Canepa.
Great. Thank you for the invitation to speak. As mentioned, my name is David Canepa. I'm on the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. I represent District 5, and I'm also on the board of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, where I chair the Mobile Source and Climate Impacts Committee. Our topic today, air quality for equality, is one that clearly intersects both my work as a county supervisor and as an air district board member, and is also something that is a personal priority for me. Public health, equity, and environmental justice are core to San Mateo County and to the Air District, guiding all the work that we do. At the Air Districts, this is reflected in its core objective of creating a healthy breathing environment for everyone. Unfortunately, the indisputable facts are that we don't have breathing equity today. In fact, that the breathing equity that exists today is more likely to be caused by the color of your skin, ethnicity, and economic circumstances, rather than any other factors. Research shows large disparities in exposure to pollution between white and non-white populations in California, and between disadvantaged communities and other communities, with Black and Latino populations experiencing significantly greater air pollution impacts than white populations. Additionally, the source of much of the disparity comes from the emission from mobile sources of air pollution: car, trucks, buses, trains, ships, and construction equipment. This is borne out by a recent California Air Resources Board study, which shows that mobile sources are the largest sources of pollution exposure disparity for Black populations and disadvantaged community residents when compared to the average population in California. Specifically, mobile sources accounted for 45% of exposure disparity for the Black population and 37% of the exposure disparity for people in disadvantaged communities. I hope we can all agree that everyone, no matter where they live, the color of their skin, their income, or background, should have the same access to opportunities to breathe clean air and lead a healthy life. The main culprit for this exposure is particulate matter, which can get deep into the lungs and is linked to asthma, COPD, and cancer. Here in the Bay Area, particulate pollution results in more than 3,000 deaths and 5,500 new childhood asthma cases every year. Additionally, the other pollutants from mobile sources and traffic have alarming health impacts, resulting in further 2,500 deaths and 5,200 new childhood asthma cases every year. Here in San Mateo County, we are certainly not immune to these disparities and impacts. The most recent version of Joint California EPA and the California Office for Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, CalEnviroscreen tool shows communities like Redwood City and South San Francisco as being with the 19th percentile of communities bearing the most burden from environmental factors such as air quality, traffic, lead, and toxic diesel particulate matter. Additionally, communities such as San Bruno, Daly City, and Brisbane are all within the 60 to 80 percentile of communities with disparate exposure by comparison to the rest of the Bay Area. In all cases, community proximity to highways is a significant factor in these results. And while we are grappling with these issues today, they didn't appear overnight. In fact, many are due to historical discrimination and unfair policies and practices, such as redlining. As I previously stated, Low-income communities of color, often called environmental justice communities, are disproportionately impacted by poor air pollution. In order to begin to address this issue, the Air District is bringing all its resources and tools to address disproportionate impacts of air pollution. Our tools include the following: rulemaking to reduce emissions from factories and business in impacted communities, our compliance and enforcement authorities, which allow us to investigate community complaints and find polluters, our education awareness program, such as Spare the Air, and our wildfire and wood smoke response programs, which to try to reduce the sources of fires and to assist communities and individuals during these events. Additionally, while the Air District does not have authority over mobile sources, we are using the power of the purse through the committee I chair to bring $120 million annual to bear on the problem of converting our transportation fleets to cleaner engines and electricity. Finally, the Air District is also partnering with impacted communities to co-develop plans to reduce exposures to toxic air pollution through the Assembly Bill 617 program. This brings additional funding to study air quality issues and to support communities in solving the problem as they identify. Being part of the solution means supporting partnerships with and the efforts of these communities so they have what they need to thrive. And when we do, all communities benefit. I want to thank you for your attention today. And I would like to reiterate what a privilege and pleasure it is for me to be representing San Mateo County on the Air District Board. And I welcome the opportunity to further discuss opportunities to support equity and environmental justice in our county and the Bay Area. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Canepa. And next, we will be having Ulysses Vinson. Ulysses Vinson has had over 25 years of government service working for two big city mayors and large government agencies. And currently, Ulysses Vinson is the director of SSMC Labs, a regional smart solutions innovation center located in the heart of Silicon Valley. The lab is designed to bring together cities, residents, businesses, tech leaders, and startups to share resources and work to solve problems. The goal is to reduce technology silos and enhance innovation beyond the traditional city borders. Prior to joining San Mateo County, Ulysses was the deputy director of the Department of Technology in San Francisco, pioneering new media strategies such as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube to better engage the community. He was also in charge of web e-services and the Emmy award-winning SF Gov TV. So we welcome Ulysses next.
Hi, everyone. It's really hard to have to start right after your supervisor, but I thank you for inviting me, and I'm really excited to hear what's being discussed. I created SMC Labs about 4 years ago, and one of the things that we were trying to do is how do we use technology to do two things. One would be to see how we can improve government services by the use of technology. And the other is just improving the quality of life for the people with the use of technology. So 4 years ago, we had just started our lab very small and started playing with new type of technologies that were normally being played out in, say, cities, like smart city initiatives people have been talking about for the last couple of years. So we were trying to see how can the county play a role in the discussions about these new smart tech. So it just so happens as we launched, we had the Northern California wildfires up in Santa Rosa. And so as one of our first use cases, we were looking to see what kind of data is out there to figure out, because like you said, a lot of people were very concerned about the air pollution during the wildfires, especially that first one. So what we found is that, and the supervisor alluded to it, was that the entire county, we only had one. We had one actual air quality monitor for the entire county. And so we were saying, well, that's not going to be, very helpful for us, because we're looking to find out how can we, get local, hyper localized data, based on the east side, the coastal side, and, along the business corridors. So we did meet with the Bay Area Air Quality District, and they were awesome. They were able to tell us what some of the things they were doing, but they didn't really have any advice to give us at the time about these new emerging technologies that are in that space. So we went out there and started researching companies, and one of the first ones we started working with was Clarity. And so we have since installed 20 air quality monitoring systems throughout the county, along the coast and along Highway 101. And they were great. I don't know if is there a slide up there for me? I don't know if there's a slide. But anyway, so we started collecting data for the first time, localized data for the county, and we have them in 20 of the cities thus far. We're working very closely with the Office of Sustainability to analyze that, because I'm a technologist. I don't really know what the data means as it relates to those questions you were asking earlier in your segment. But what we did is we went and researched what's out there. So we had everything from Purple Airs, which are very inexpensive, to Clarity, which is more of a medium price type solution to get the data. And one of the reasons why we chose them is that it's solar powered and it did not require electricity. And it's also battery powered, and all of the data gets transmitted to the cloud immediately. So you get live local data that comes in the form of a dashboard. And it was very inexpensive. They cost about $1,000 a piece. And we're very happy with them so far. The second one that we did was we partnered with a company called Aclama, where we took a 14.5 square mile section with majority of San Mateo, the city of San Mateo, parts of Burlingame, and we had an electric vehicle that had air quality monitoring equipment located on top, kind of similar to what you see if you ever seen one of the Google Street View cars or one of the Waymo cars. It kind of looks like a setup like that. And we started collecting, again, localized data within this 14.5 square mile. And it was very interesting because where Clarity gives you instant live data, the Aclama model, actually, they make several passes over the course of 6 months, and then they can actually get a benchmark, right? So they cover, they're making multiple passes at the same locations within that 14 square mile footprint. And I think they since are now they have a contract now with the Bay Area Air Quality District to do more of that kind of things. So that's why, for me, that's what I've been doing in that space with air quality. I will tell you that there's several cities who have been very passionate about it, particularly Menlo Park, with the wildfires that happened last year, because they were down in the South Bay and touched San Mateo County. So I spoke before their board of supervisors, or their city council, I should say, and they wanted to partner with us to add more. So we've created this network that I think, for the first time, the county has hyper local information, and you can find out, or you can go to our website at smclabs.io and just click on, should say live air quality data, and then you'll see it. A couple of them are offline right now. And the good thing about these particular ones, they can be optimized for things like events like a wildfire too. So they can actually remotely make changes to the algorithms that helps them come up with the data. And lastly, I'll just say, we positioned one right outside of the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And we feel that the data that we're getting is similar and very robust. So I think we have the equipment and the hardware that we've been testing for the last 3 years has been working for us. And I'm sorry, did you have a slide up too?
Oh, I didn't. I
Okay,
thought you
all
were
right.
going to share, but I can also just display it really quickly if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I created a slide. I took off of a meeting I'm having next week with Redwood City, because Middlefield Road, and again, like the supervisor was saying, has the highest cases of asthma in the entire country. And they were doing this big rescaping creating a new streetscape. And I've just been approved to do the innovation for the entire streetscape, and that would include, Vision Zero type technologies, air quality technologies. And so right there was just one slide that kind of tells you what the clarity ones are, low cost. But I will say the prices are going up for these things because I think the companies have gotten smart that they don't want to just sell the hardware, they want to sell you the software packages, which now it gets a lot more expensive. So we're working very closely with our Department of Public Health because they have data that actually shows, yeah, that's a little picture, the little white box on the top. That's what it looks like, and it's solar. And even I installed it, by the way. I didn't wait for Public Works to do it for me. So me and my team got on a ladder and a pickup truck, and we put all 20 of those up around the county ourselves. So that's what we do. We have this little sandbox that we like to play with and see what works. Because government is, they're really adverse to risks. So they want to make sure that it works. So before we did the whole 20 in deployment, we just put up 5 and just see how for a few months to see how it worked. And it was very easy. We got on a ladder and bought some clamps from Home Depot and got our hands a little dirty. So that's what we're at. We're only going to be, for the next couple of years, we're going to be adding to this network for the next 2 years. So thank you. And this is just kind of what the price is. But as you can see, year 2, you have to pay for the software. So it does get a little more expensive as we're going out. But we are going to work with our Public Works and Office of Sustainability to figure out, what data is needed for them to do all the amazing work that they do with the data. And that's it.
Thank you so much.
Great work. A ladder and some clamps, and get I love it. That's awesome.
That's right.
All right, and for our final speaker, we will be having Eddie on. I personally got the pleasure to work with Eddie on Brightline's air quality monitoring program a few months ago as an air quality fellow. So I was working on educating the public on air pollution issues and existing disparities in air quality. Eddie On is currently the executive director of Brightline Defense, which is an environmental justice nonprofit. And prior to being a nonprofit attorney, he was a AmeriCorps member, serving as an after-school programmer in Oakland's Chinatown. He serves as a commissioner for 3 government agencies: SF Commission on the Environment, the SF Bay Conservation and Development Commission, and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. And he also serves on boards in the Asian Pacific Environmental Network and the Mission Housing Development Corporation. Eddie received his JD from the University of California, Hastings College of Law, and his BA from Brown University. And he's also a member of the California State Bar. So please welcome Eddie.
Thanks, Tori. It was great working with you as well, and I'll feature Tori later on in the presentation, as you see. Typically I really enjoy speaking in person for events, but that's not where we are. It hasn't been for some time now, for a good year and a half. But there is one advantage, which is to take you on a little picture adventure of sorts through, Zoom. And what I'll do is I'll share my screen. We have a short slideshow ready for you that's mostly picture driven. And hopefully we'll give you a sense of our nonprofit's air quality monitoring program. You heard Supervisor Kanepa earlier describe the AB 617 program, which this is a part of. And hopefully it's showing up, thumbs up. Okay, great. Let me see if I can even blow it up a little more so it's even better. Does it now blow up on the entire screen? Okay, fantastic. So it's run by a nonprofit, and I'll describe the connections shortly. The term of art I'll use to describe the communities that we're serving will be frontline communities. Now, you'll have heard a lot of terms thrown around already. Supervisor Kanepa talked about environmental justice communities. The state has its own term called disadvantaged communities. Even California Air Resources Board has decided to add on to that later, and I'll show you the map called priority populations, which is essentially taking the disadvantaged communities definition and layering on a low-income communities definition. It gets complicated really quick, but for the purposes of our discussion today, This is the stakeholder group of the air quality monitoring program. You can see the California Air Resources Board is really the driving force alongside the California Climate Investments Program, but it's in collaboration with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. It's administered by Brightline, but there are also two other nonprofit partners involved, which I'll describe their work more later. Community Youth Center, CYC of San Francisco, and Central City SRO Collaborative, which is a tenant leadership empowerment group around SROs, which I'll also describe more later. And our technical partner is Clarity, and you've heard Ulysses describe that technology today, which is essentially this solar-powered sensor mounted usually on light poles, but they can be really mounted anywhere vertically. And then we've done a number of collaborations as well. So Stanford University with both the Urban Studies program, which Toria was a part of, as well as an air quality professor group, I would say medical research group, which we've been collaborating over the last 6 months now or so. And then of course, it involves collaboration with, over 6 city agencies. So there are a lot of agencies in the mix who have very localized concerns over air quality as well. But this is the definitional work that we'll begin with, just to try to define the communities that we're serving. And you'll see where the air quality sensors are located relative to this map too later on. But on the left, you'll just see a generic Google map essentially of San Francisco. On the right, you'll see this color-coded definition. Essentially, the blue is supposed to be low-income communities as defined by the state, and the kind of pinkish, or the diagonal, I should say, would be more the disadvantaged communities definition as mapped by Calum-Screen. And you can see if it's just limited to Calum-Screen, the 3.0 version, it's pretty a small portion of San Francisco. That said, I think a lot of communities that feel underserved in San Francisco would actually not be happy if the diagonal was the only thing that was represented in San Francisco. For instance, Chinatown is noticeably missing in this definition. It's covered in the blue part, but it's not covered in the diagonal part. So that's why this composite definition has been created since then, around AB 617 in particular. This is a larger description of the nonprofits. I'll just gloss over it very briefly. Brightline is based in San Francisco, in South of Market in particular. Our work is ultimately a blend of programmatic work and policy work. So myself, I'm a lawyer by training. We also keep 2 other lawyers on staff, but I also want to recognize our policy associate, Sarah Shu, who's here with us today, who carries on some of our bigger picture work, whether it's like promoting, for instance, offshore wind for the state of California, or trying to look at how overall the grid can be serviced better by a more robust clean energy economy. We also have Cecilia Mejia, our program coordinator. Prior, Daniela Cortez really was a driving force behind the air quality monitoring program. Cecilia today is carrying on Daniela's good work and is managing everything from our job training aspect of our nonprofit, which is essentially a collaborative form of programming with other nonprofits, with Brightline again as the lead, as well as our air quality monitoring program. In the middle is Central City SRO Collaborative, and they're a really great community organizing group based in the heart of the Tenderloin. They serve a lot of SRO tenants directly and address their needs through their leadership program. And on the right, you'll see Community Youth Center, which is a large education services provider based in San Francisco as well. 3 offices across the city, 150 staffers. They easily serve probably nowadays 8,000 to 9,000 youth alone on an annual basis. And you'll see how they're plugged into the program too. Oh, okay. So this, represents happier times on the left, where the first convening of the air quality monitoring program came together. You have everyone from Jose Saldana, who represent California Air Resources Board on the left, to Air District staff, which are more in the middle of this photo, to on the right, you'll see, for instance, CYC staff, Central City SRO Collaborative staff, as well as Daniela Cortez on the far right as a Brightline program coordinator. And on the right gives you a sense of structure, like how this ultimately operates, with CARB as the original administering agency of AB 617, the piece of legislation and the state funding source, Brightline as a lead nonprofit, and then with other nonprofits as well as a technical partner working on various aspects of the program. Now, a quick note about SROs, which, I'll throw this term out a lot and you may or may not know about it. It stands for single room occupancy buildings. These are turn of the century buildings. Major American cities used to have very robust amounts of SRO building stock. And essentially, their intention at the time was to serve as a form of temporary housing for largely blue collar immigrant workforce that was serving American cities. San Francisco is one of the few cities in the US that has chosen to maintain its SRO building stock. A lot of cities have just straight up demolished their SRO building stock and replaced them with other types of buildings. But SROs are unique in the sense that these are small living conditions. In Chinatown, as small as 80 square feet, which you'll see some of these rooms represented. And then there's shared facilities as well. So they're shared bathrooms, shared kitchens. The building quality varies widely. As you can see, this is super cramped. On the bottom right, you'll also see the conditions of the shared shower facility is not great. You can see mold, for instance, growing in the corner. And you can just imagine during pandemic times, it is incredibly intense to live in these very small conditions. In Chinatown SROs too, there's a phenomenon known as SRO families. So even in 80 square feet, as many as 3 or 4 people can live in that space. If you can imagine, just the lack of privacy, then couple in with climate disasters, heat wave, air quality impacts from wildfires, it's really, really bad at times. And these are buildings that are without modern HVAC infrastructure too. And another unusual quirk of the Bay Area as well, the rents are phenomenally high as well still of SRO. So much so that fixed income and low income tenants are sometimes getting priced out of SROs too. But I won't delve into the technology so much. You heard Ulysses describe it, but this is essentially the device that we have started using as part of this program, 19 of these. And then there are phases in this project ranging from planning to data collection and data analysis. And again, because I'll cover this later, I'll go quickly to the next slide and just describe more generally how is air quality monitoring done across the state. We have reference stations, which you might be also familiar with purple air, but if you think of purple air, usually the acquisition of that is on an individual basis. In other words, if you have the expendable $200, $300 in your bank account to go buy a purple air sensor, and if you look at the placement of it, even in San Francisco, it tends to advantage wealthier neighborhoods. So in other words, households that can actually afford a purple air sensor. So even last year in August 2020, when we were starting to site these sensors, there was a very strong interest in just even knowing what were the localized conditions of their air quality. Ulysses also mentioned earlier Aclima, the company, and from what I've been told too, air quality is highly variable by even a half block radius. So just even understanding that and having access to that hyperlocal data, I think has been very valuable. Of course, the air district, the regional air district does its own air quality monitoring, and that's where their regulatory quality, reference stations, these are air quality monitoring stations the size of an entire room with all of these really expensive pieces of equipment embedded into it. That's also valuable too, but it's usually one per city or one even per county. It's not as widespread for the region. So just moving into quickly the installation phase, which was a very stressful time. I have a lot more white hair as a result of that time. You can even see me, for instance, scrambling up a ladder there in the middle, trying to site air quality sensor in a park. Even getting an air quality sensor sited was work and a half. It took approval processes from at least 3 different agencies. And I mentioned that we were collaborating with over 6 at the time. On the left, you'll see some press coverage of our work. I noticed that photo was shared earlier by Ulysses. That's Bodecker Park right there. And that's one of our sensors being sited in the heart of the Tenderloin. But on the right too, you'll see Daniela working with CYC staff to site it on a rooftop as well. So really we had done an intense amount of surveying prior with the community residents, a couple hundred responses recorded, what would be the street corners of interest. And then afterwards, it was just trying to find approval processes, amongst those street corners of interest, where would we actually end up siting these sensors? You can also see this map that indicates now our spread, and you can see the intense red blob in the middle. That's really South of Market, Tenderloin, the neighborhoods we are specifically serving. And this is like a better representation of how the Brightline network is spread out across the city. The west side is supposed to be more of a control sensor in theory, while the east side is supposed to be, the so-called, disadvantaged community or frontline community that we're trying to serve per the AB 617 grant guidelines. And then just to mention, we are working with a number of community organizers and youth leaders on this project. So there's the air quality monitoring that's available on an open data map, but to also spread the word about the availability of this open data map are community organizers like Reggie Reed, who's representing the top right corner there, an SRO tenant leader. So at any point in time, we're working with 15 different SRO tenant leaders of the group Central City SRO Collaborative. These are SRO tenants representing their own buildings, understanding their own lived experiences, and bringing their organizing experiences to, do everything from putting up posters in the neighborhood, talking about the air quality monitoring, to traffic counts more recently. So they're doing a wide variety of community outreach activities associated with air quality. On the bottom right corner are high school students. So we have 10 high school students representing 10 different high schools in San Francisco. Also spreading the good word. This is at a tabling event where they're holding up flyers about air quality as well. And then finally, we're getting into the data analysis stage. So we're noticing some effects, and this is where we're trying to refine the network, get a better sense of where street corners are registering higher air quality impacts. We've noticed generally wildfire is pretty uniformly bad across the city. It's pretty catastrophic. But the hope is like we can also get a sense of elevation and how air quality differs based on that. This is also highlighting the efforts of the Stanford Urban Studies program. And you can see Tori in the top right corner there alongside her colleagues. But then you can see some of the stuff that they created. So on the left, you can see, for instance, the air quality monitoring program poster that we ended up putting up in the neighborhood. And in the bottom middle photo, you'll see Reggie Reed posing proudly in front of a posted poster in a local convenience store in the Tenderloin. And then on the right-hand corner too, more of the flyers and posters designed by the Stanford group are being distributed by youth leaders. And then in the top right corner too, you can see the entire group. This is like when we met through Zoom, and I hope to meet you one day in person, Tori, but we're not quite there yet, I suppose. So it was a good collaborative partnership as well. And then this slide, as well as this slide, just to toggle back and forth, notice on the bottom left corner, the poster's been translated into Spanish. And then we've also had a lot of media work done with particularly Chinese speaking populations. San Francisco has a significant portion of Cantonese speaking residents in particular. And I think this is an essential component of environmental justice that's often not highlighted, that language justice or language access itself is really important to serve environmental justice communities. So even being able to talk with monolingual communities on their own terms about air quality is really important. So you'll see, for instance, Sarah Wan and the executive director of CYC in the top left corner talking with Chinese language press, and then myself trying to explain as best as I can about the air quality monitoring sensor that we're installing specifically in Chinatown as well. And then finally, some observations. We're noticing that San Francisco faces a higher air pollution PM10 counts in Berkeley or Redwood City in particular. The Clarity Node network stretches across the Bay Area, so there's some comparison points we're able to make. And then upcoming too, we're also trying to compare it against traffic counts, so we can actually measure the impacts of traffic volume against increases or decreases in air quality impacts accordingly. And PM 2.5 is the measurement we are hoping to focus on. To end on a fun note, we have a Brightline podcast that we've been working hard on. This is featuring in particular West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project, Miss Margaret Gordon, if you've ever had the pleasure of meeting Miss Gordon, or Miss Margaret as she's easily known. But on the bottom right too, we've also made sure to feature people from the Air District, and it's been a fun project to do. It's more about trying to highlight community voices. It's not supposed to be about Brightline all the time. And we hope maybe in the future to feature the good work of Sustainable San Mateo as well. That would be a lot of fun too. And this is our social media. But thanks for having me today. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions later on if there are any in the discussion.
Thank you so much, Eddie, and thank you to all of our speakers. Now we will be getting into the next section of I need to get it pulled up, but next section of our presentation where we will be discussing. So here are our discussion questions. So we want you guys to consider what is going well in terms of addressing air quality inequities based off of like what we've heard today, and what do we think can be done better. And then we also want to consider what personal commitments we can make in order to advocate for air quality justice. And I can put these questions in the chat so that we can remember them. And so we're just gonna break into breakout rooms to discuss these two questions, and then we'll have a group discussion when we're done. So maybe about, I would say maybe about 8 minutes in the breakout rooms.
Yeah, perfect.
Welcome back, everyone. Okay, so we're gonna try to have a group discussion on what we spoke about in our small groups. So for the first question, what do you guys think is going well in terms of addressing air quality inequities and what can be done better? Maybe we can start with room one. Well, actually, I don't know if you guys, if everybody remembers the rooms they were in. So room one was D. Clark, John Crowell, Megan King, Rebecca E. Skinner, Robert Whitehair, and Ulysses.
I can.
Yeah. Okay.
What our group said, I didn't contribute much, but we talked about that the data collection in the county seems pretty good. And now the question is kind of what's the policy solution that follows it? And is it following fast enough?
Yeah. And I'm just putting in a website. We were the first county in the country to partner with Google with their Environmental Insight Explorer tool. And I'm just going to put a link. It has some really good data about just kind of like how the transportation network impacts the county. And it also gives some insights if the county used its buildings, for example, to be able to create more solar powered networks throughout the county. And it basically tells you and shows you how we can really reduce that carbon footprint with that as well. So I just put it in the chat for you guys. If it's specific to San Mateo County, and it's called the Google Environmental Insight Explorer tool.
Someone in our group said that even though things are generally fairly good in parts of the county, it still means though that some parts of the county have high asthma rates. I think that was you, John, who said that.
Yeah.
That just because things are good doesn't mean it's perfect for everybody.
That's correct.
Does group two want to go real quickly?
Yeah. So room two is Cecilia, Maria, Neela, and Nikki.
I can report out. I'm sort of embarrassed to admit that we spent too much time introducing ourselves and sort of chatting to really get into the questions.
Okay.
But Cecilia mentioned some work that she's doing, and I'm blanking now on the name of her group, and maybe it's even Brightline, but looking at trying to come up with projects to improve resources for people who wouldn't otherwise have resources for air filtration, like air filtration centers, so that when the wildfires come, there are resources available. And that sounds really exciting.
Good. And group three.
So that was my group. I think we had a really good discussion. We talked a lot about how just like having the existing data is really helpful for progress, is showing what the current issues are, and then also educating the public on issues of air quality. And then in terms of progress, we talked about how the main issue is just that a lot of progress doesn't come until we finally have a crisis with air pollution, whether it's like a big wildfire impacting people really significantly, or some other air pollution crisis. It's like more of a reactive thing versus actually having like more preventative measures. So that's something that we definitely need to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. And group four, does somebody want to speak out of that group?
That was Terry and Tess. It was a small room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
took one look at us and left. We had a good discussion though. Tess had a really good comment. So we talked about the fact that, there are many pollutions around the major freeways in the county, which affect low-income communities near them. And a really easy solution is for more people to buy electric vehicles, right? And we're going to have to do that anyway because of the state mandate coming down. So I think that is, to me, one of the, easy solutions to this problem that we are all going to have to get on board.
Yeah, good. Okay. Thank you. And then group 5, Mike, you had a suggestion about for the expansion of Highway 101 that you had presented, but didn't maybe go anywhere about a health.
Whoops.
I'm going to put myself on mute. Okay, that's my dog talking very loudly. Anyway, Mike, do you want to say something?
Can you hear me?
Mike, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so one thing we were talking about in terms of making things is pretty simple, not worse. And when we're making decisions like expand as we want, et cetera, et cetera. We're just getting further and further people if we continue to make things. We're already in such a precarious position. The other thing is we talked about shouldn't be trying to, it's okay to have plans in place, but with 101, they've got a started for low income people that are adversely affected. But instead of focusing on the actual that the highway is going to cause, like childhood asthma, lung disease, they're simply giving clipper car passes to residents, just kind of buy them off. Again, I think we want to, one, do the right thing and don't make the problems worse. Two, don't try to smooth over the negative impact. That really don't address the underlying problem.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Mike. We're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, so I'm just going to kind of close it up here and just say thank you to everybody who came tonight to talk about this really important topic. And there are some links in the chat to access some of this information. And I just want to really thank you to Ulysses Vinson talking about how 4 years ago there was only one air quality monitor in the county, and now we have 20. So that's fantastic, and really raising awareness of the issue and why we need to do this. And Eddie, thank you so much for your talking about what you're doing with Bright Line Defense. And it was really interesting to hear that. And I also want to say thanks to all of our sponsors. You can see them here. Because we couldn't do this without our sponsors, and we're so proud to have everybody. You can see Bohannon, Peninsula Clean Energy, Google, Medallion, and we're just really thankful. But we're really thankful to have all of you come and participate with us. And we hope you'll join us for our next event that we'll have. And we have our to be determined, our next subject. But we hope you'll come back and join us. And we love having the break rooms to have a little bit of discussion, and Maria, even if it's just introducing each other, that's great too, because it's just a way to connect and stay connected. So thanks everybody for being here tonight. Thanks to our interns, you're all fabulous. Thanks to the everybody who came tonight. Have a great evening, and we'll see you at our next one. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Have a good night.
You too.